A detective's dilemma, a crossing paths with Amanda. The bustling streets of the city seemed to fade into the background as Nick made his way through the crowded gallery, his keen eyes scanning the scene for any clues that might help unravel the mystery of Elise Boudreaux's murder. Just as he was about to crouch down for a closer inspection of the victim's body, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd, her dark eyes narrowing as they locked onto him. "Maritais," Amanda Sinclair said, her voice laced with both annoyance and intrigue. "I should have known you'd be here." Nick felt a surge of anticipation mixed with a touch of dread. Amanda Sinclair was the city's top forensic investigator, a brilliant and meticulous mind that often clashed with his more intuitive approach to solving cases. Their professional relationship was a delicate dance of mutual respect and occasional tension, and Nick couldn't help but wonder how this high-profile investigation would unfold with her on the scene. "Sinclair," he replied, straightening up to face her. "I take it you're here to help?" Amanda scoffed, her lips curving into a sardonic smile. "I was called in to consult on the case. Apparently, the higher-ups think this one needs a little extra attention." Nick inwardly groaned. Of course, the brass would want to bring in their best and brightest to handle a high-profile murder like this. He had hoped to have a bit more control of the investigation, but with Amanda's formidable presence, that clearly wasn't going to be the case.
Murder like this.
"Well then, I suppose we'd better get to work," he said, gesturing toward the body. "What can you tell me about the victim?" Amanda knelt down beside the lifeless form of Elise Boudreaux, her nimble fingers gently probing the wound.
He said,
Elise Boudreaux, 42 years old, single gunshot wound to the chest. Based on the lividity and rigor, I'd estimate the time of death to be between 2 and 4 a.m. Nick listened intently, his mind already piecing together a timeline of events. "Any signs of a struggle?" "Not that I can see," Amanda replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The wound is clean and there's no defensive injuries. It looks like she was taken by surprise. So, no forced entry, no signs of a struggle." Nick murmured, his gaze sweeping the gallery. "Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Or they got lucky," Amanda countered, her eyes narrowing. "Let's not jump to conclusions just yet, Moretti. We still have a lot of work to do." Nick couldn't help but feel a twinge of annoyance at her dismissive tone, but he knew better than to argue. Amanda was right. They needed to focus on the facts, not speculation. "All right then," he said, straightening up. "Let's get started." As the two investigators began to comb through the crime scene, Nick couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation mixed with trepidation. Working with Amanda was always a challenge, but there was an undeniable energy and intensity that he found both exhilarating and exhausting. Their investigative styles were like night and day. Nick relied on his intuition and instincts, while Amanda was a meticulous and analytical thinker who pored over every detail. It was a dynamic that had led to numerous clashes in the past, but it had also given birth to some of their most profound breakthroughs. As they moved through the gallery, gathering witness statements and examining the physical evidence, Nick couldn't help but steal occasional glances at Amanda, her brow furrowed in concentration, her fingers deftly handling the delicate forensic samples, her keen mind working tirelessly to piece together the puzzle. There was an undeniable grace and focus to her movements, and Nick found himself captivated by the way she commanded the scene. "What are you staring at, Moretti?" Amanda suddenly asked, her eyes narrowing as she caught him watching her. Nick felt a heat rise to his cheeks, cursing himself for being so transparent. "Nothing," he said quickly, clearing his throat. "I was just observing your process." Amanda's lips curved into a small, amused smile. "Uh-huh. Well, if you're done ogling, why don't you go interview some of the witnesses? I'm sure they have information that could help move this case forward." Nick nodded, grateful for the opportunity to escape her penetrating gaze. As he made his way through the crowd, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Working with Amanda was always a delicate balancing act, and he knew that the slightest misstep could jeopardize their already fragile partnership. But there was something about her that kept drawing him in, like a moth to a flame. Her intelligence, her dedication, her unwavering commitment to the truth. It all spoke to a kindred spirit within him, a shared passion for justice that transcended the boundaries of their professional roles. As Nick began to interview the witnesses, he found himself constantly aware of Amanda's presence, her sharp eyes and analytical mind dissecting every piece of evidence that came their way. The case was rapidly unfolding, with new leads and potential suspects emerging with each passing hour, and Nick knew that they needed to work together if they were going to have any hope of cracking it. Despite their differences, Nick couldn't deny the respect and admiration he felt for Amanda. She was a formidable force, a brilliant mind that challenged him at every turn, and he found himself increasingly drawn to her in ways he couldn't quite explain. As the day wore on, the two investigators continued to work tirelessly, their banter and occasional clashes punctuating the intense moments of collaboration. Nick could feel the tension building, the stakes rising with each new development, and he knew that the only way to navigate the treacherous path ahead was to find a way to bridge the gap between them. But with Elise Boudreaux's killer still at large and a growing list of suspects to consider, Nick couldn't afford to be distracted by the growing attraction he felt toward his forensic counterpart. The case had to come first, no matter what personal complications arose along the way. As the sun began to set over the city, Nick and Amanda convened to compare notes, their eyes meeting across the table in a silent exchange of both frustration and understanding. They were at a critical juncture, and they both knew it. The fate of the investigation, and perhaps even their own professional relationship, hung in the balance. With a deep breath, Nick steeled his resolve and prepared to dive back into the case, determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Whatever lay ahead, he knew that he and Amanda would have to navigate it together, their growing bond serving as both a source of strength and a potential liability. Unraveling the mystery. The city streets were quiet as Nick and Amanda made their way back to the station, the weight of Elise Boudreaux's murder case heavy on their minds. The investigation had taken a frustrating turn, with leads seemingly drying up and potential suspects proving elusive. Nick gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white as he navigated the nearly deserted roads. The tension between him and Amanda was palpable, the lingering sparks of their earlier disagreements still flickering under the surface. "So, what's our next move?" Amanda asked, her voice cutting through the silence. Nick glanced over at her, taking in her sharp features and the determined set of her jaw. "We need to dig deeper into Elise's background, see if we can uncover any enemies or potential motives." Amanda nodded, her fingers tapping against the passenger side door. "I've been going over the forensic evidence, and there's not much to go on. No signs of a struggle, no foreign DNA, and the bullet was a clean shot. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." "Yeah, that's what I'm worried about." Nick sighed, his brow furrowing. This wasn't some random act of violence. It was a calculated and precise execution, which means the killer is likely someone close to the victim, Amanda concluded, her eyes narrowing. Someone with a personal connection and a reason to want her dead. Nick nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. Elise was well connected in the art community, both locally and nationally. "We'll need to start reaching out to her colleagues, friends, and business associates. See if any of them have a history of animosity or a motive for murder." "I'll get my team on that," Amanda said, her tone resolute. "In the meantime, I want to take another look at the crime scene. There has to be something we're missing." Nick couldn't help but admire her tenacity, the way she refused to give up even in the face of a seemingly hopeless case. It was a quality he both envied and respected, and he found himself drawn to her unwavering determination.